Well, my body lies over the ocean. My body lies over the sea. Ooh, my body lies over the ocean. Oh, bring back my body to me. Bring back, oh, bring back
And
my...
welcome to the Scott Arizala Show from camphacker.org. My name is Travis Allison, and I'm really excited to welcome Scott back to the show. Welcome to your show, Scott.
Thanks for hosting once again. Today we are going to be talking about first 5 minute skills. And that's something I've been training a lot on the last few years. And when I'm talking about the first 5 minute skills, I'm really talking about those first 5 minutes that your counselors and your staff, your frontline staff, are with kids. Maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, I went to a speaker here in town, and she had just written a book about friendship, best friends, so on and so forth. And she talked about a study that just fascinated me, and I want to open today's episode by sharing the study with you all. Basically what they had done is they got, college students, which is, sort of how everybody runs studies now. And they loaded up a backpack full of a pretty heavy, what sounds like backpack. And they had 3 different groups. They had a group who wore the backpack alone, a group that wore the backpack with sort of acquaintances, like people they knew but not necessarily their good friends. And then the third group was people who wore the backpack with some of their best friends. And what they did is they stood them at the bottom of a really steep hill, sort of looking up the hill. And they asked them a bunch of questions sort of throughout, but the ones that this particular study was looking at was the questions and the answers that they asked sort of about their perspective of how steep this hill was that was in front of them. And what was absolutely fascinating, and evidently they've been able to replicate these findings a few times, what's really fascinating is that the group that was by themselves thought it was the steepest. The group that was with acquaintances thought it looked pretty steep. And the group that was with their really good friends thought it was steep, but it was totally manageable and doable. And it was really interesting because what the study was basically saying is when you are surrounded by friends and people you care about, your perspective of life gets more positive. It's easier to see things in a manageable, more positive light. And I thought that was incredible. I mean, I was just astounded by this, so much so that I actually went home from hearing the speaker and I spent a couple hours Googling it and really trying to read up on this sort of body of work. And again, as it turns out, the more you are surrounded by friends and good friends and people you feel really connected to, the more positive you see challenges, issues, new experiences, so on and so forth. You can all imagine why I wanted to talk about this particular study at the beginning of this episode. I mean, this has really significant consequences for what we're doing at camp. When I talk to young people or staff or frontline staff about the first 5 minute skills, what I'm really talking about is how can we, when we get kids into our group, how can we immediately help them make connections? And there's lots of different skills, but I want us all to keep this in mind, that kids are coming into your particular camp, into your environment, whether they've been coming for 10 years or this is their very first time or they're somewhere in between, whether they're coming by themselves or with a whole group of friends, whatever the sort of the situation is, they're coming into your environment new. Things are new, things are different. Even if they've been coming back year after year after year, the staff is different. Their particular counselor, might be in the other cabin as opposed to their cabin. Groups at day camp, we might be doing different programs, so on and so forth. So the idea behind that this study talks about, and behind the whole concept of having a group of skills that we're going to call first 5 minute skills, is in those first 5 minutes being able to pull kids in and create connections immediately. And so I thought we could start, Travis, with talking about that.
So, Scott, the importance of it is that kids feel then more able to go after new things and go after new challenges.
Well, yeah, I think generally, well, whether it's challenges, potential insecurities, new things. I mean, think about all the things kids might go through in their first couple of hours at camp, right? The whole environment's brand new. The schedule is brand new. All these people are brand new. I mean, at resident camp, we do some of the funniest things to kids in the first few hours there at camp than anywhere else that we're ever working with kids. I mean, typically we're taking them away from their stuff. We're basically separating them from all their stuff and saying, hey, your stuff is going to get to where you're going. You don't even know where that is yet, but your stuff will get there. In the first couple of hours at most resident camps, we're having them get undressed and get their swimsuits on so that they can go down and take a swim test at the waterfront. I mean, implicit underneath that is, hey, go get naked in front of all these other people. I mean, I don't want to be critical of what camps do. I'm just saying that it can be really overwhelming for kids, even if we don't have some of these like socially awkward kind of things. It's all brand new. And I guess what the study is really saying is that when we can connect them, the perspective around those things becomes more positive. So if it is a challenge that they're facing, if I don't have any friends here, I don't know if I'm going to like it. Maybe that's the challenge that they're facing. If we can connect them quickly with each other, the perspective that they have around that particular challenge becomes more positive. With that one, it's obvious. If I'm feeling lonely or like I don't have friends, and all of a sudden I've got this counselor who's saying, hey, Scott, how you doing? Here's this other kid in your cabin and this other kid, and let's go play Frisbee or whatever, and keeps them really active and engaged right at the beginning, well, of course, that's going to minimize the sort of negative effects of that particular insecurity or fear or whatever. So there's so much, I think, in the sort of lying underneath this idea of perspective that I think we need to talk about, and we need to think about clearly. I mean, the reality is that most camps and most people do a lot of the things. I mean, I've got a whole list of stuff that I want to talk about as far as actual first 5-minute skills. And the interesting part about it is, I think a lot of people are going to hear this list and go, well, we do that. And that's wonderful that you do that. But my question is why? And if we can understand why it's important to do some of these things, we maybe can be more intentional in those moments, as opposed to just, and this is my very first 5-minute skill, is to make introductions immediately and try as best you can, especially for some of the overnight camps that are dealing straight away with parents who are coming in and trying to manage the situation. And for a lot of day camps, I mean, obviously we have that too, right? The best we can, we want to get on the level of that kid first and say, hey, my name is Scott, I'm going to be your counselor. Here's this other kid that's in the group, get them talking to each other, and then, hey, I'm Scott, I'm your kid's counselor, so on and so forth. So if we're going to talk about a skill like introducing kids immediately to everybody else in the group, okay, well, a lot of people I think are going to say, well, I do that. Awesome. But I want you to understand why it's important. And if we can understand why it's important, then we can start thinking more intentionally about, well, what are some of the other things that we can do that help that? Maybe one of the things that we can do with introducing folks right away to each other is we can maybe have a bunch of name tag stuff right there, either in our group at day camp, like where we're meeting, or in our cabin at resident camp. And right there, we can have a little activity where we're starting to make name tags for each other. Or for some of the camps, they use camp names, right? Starting to talk about that right away with kids, because it's a way to sort of introduce and break the ice and have kids get to know each other.
Yes, being a camp name person myself, I totally get that. It's a great way to get past the barrier of, this is all so new and so overwhelming. Hey, you have what is your name? Yeah.
And where did that come from and why? And yeah.
And Scott, just before you go on to camp first 5-minute skills, do you think that there's things that parents can do to give their kids those skills for when they arrive, to give them a bit better footing
Well, I mean, sure. I think, as a parent myself, and I think any parent out there, you want your kid to be sort of armed with a lot of different sort of strategies, coping skills, social skills whenever they go into situations. So I think parents can sort of do more of the same. Camp's not different in that sort of light than anything. When you take your kid to daycare, when you take your kid to school, when you take your kid to the next door neighbor's house to play for a while. I mean, you want them to have, sort of some social awareness and some social skills. So speaking directly to parents, I would say things like, get your kid experience going into a social environment where they don't know very many people. Maybe that's a class down at the YMCA, or maybe that's a play group with your sort of work friends that, not their friends from school, or something where they're going in and they're having to do things like, introduce themselves or try to find some common ground. I mean, the reality is, Travis, you and I and Matt and Jennifer and some of the folks that are watching right now, we all kind of grew up in kind of a different time. I mean, a lot of us learned some of these skills by going down to the playground, and playing at the neighborhood playground until, the street lights came on. I mean, I don't ever remember adults sitting there. And frankly, I take my daughter to the playground a lot. And every single kid, you can see which adult, they're attached to. Even the older ones, even the ones that are what look to be 12, 13, 14 years old, have some sort of an adult that they're attached to. That never really happened before. And I love playgrounds because it's still, you can still see some of that stuff happening, but we don't have necessarily, our kids don't have necessarily as many opportunities to have some of those sort of social experiences to learn some of these skills. So as a parent, I would say, talk to your kids about some of those things. Put them in that situation where you can sort of scaffold for them and support them and show them how to do some of those things. And then of course, set up your kid for success, meaning talk about how there are really positive adults there, that your counselor is always going to be somebody that you can talk to. Dr. Chris Thurber talks a lot about avoiding a pickup deal, because he does a lot about homesickness, and I love what he talks about when it comes to avoiding a pickup deal, as far as telling parents, don't make that promise that I'll come and get you. I think it goes even farther than that, like, don't undermine the counselors and the other adults at camp by saying, you can always call me if you need to, and so on and so forth. Frame it for them. Say, you can always talk to your counselor if there's an issue or a problem. I mean, set them up so that they have some strategies to work through some of the potential issues or challenges that they're feeling. And successes, by the way, right? Like, something really sweet happens, you do something really well, I want you to be able to tell your counselors or your unit leaders or whatever the names for the frontline staff are at your camp.
Yeah, I think it's great things for parents to do for their kids. Sometimes I think we as camp leaders have to be very explicit with parents about those things and give them the idea that you need to have this talk before you arrive at camp. And if I could share just one quick story, friends of ours, their son, who is our godson, he, from the time he could talk, would go up to any adult in a room and shake their hand and say, "How do you do?" And I don't think he really understood what it meant, but it was really cute. It was a great lesson, I think, for him, because it still sticks with it, so it's fun.
3 Adventures International Camp Staff.
3 things you should know about 3 Adventures. 1. Our owners are all former camp directors. 2. We're a high-quality company that's easy on your budget. 3. Background checks. Our international camp staff come from all over the world, and every one of them has had a background check. No exceptions, no excuses. 3adventures.com, the site to get great camps connected with great staff.
Yeah, so thank you for taking us down that path. I do want to hear you continue about the stuff that the camp staff can do in that first 5 minutes.
Sure. And like I said, a lot of it, I'm sure you already do. Another great example is keeping kids active right away in those first 5 minutes. This is really hard. It's challenging for a lot of frontline staff because at day camp, sort of Receiving kids might be a bit staggered. Resident camp on opening day, it's like you could be getting kids sort of all day long. And some of you have co-counselors and sort of the staff or human resources to be able to, be managing a group of kids being active over here as well as receiving kids over here or whatever. Sometimes you don't. So you've got to play around with how you do this, but keeping kids active and engaged straight away, whether that's simple stuff like we were talking about before, having some activities in the cabin or in the group area around name tags or things like that. Other times it can be more active, like going out in front of the cabin and throwing a frisbee while kids are coming and whatever. So I think being really active right at the beginning. As soon as you start getting a whole group together or a majority of the group, there's a lot of things that I think you can do as far as movement that really help. Bringing kids sort of around camp from place to place. When you're doing that, I want you to point out some really important things. I want you to think sort of about like the needs hierarchy of what people need, the bathroom, food, water, where are they going to put their stuff? I mean, really sort of these basic kind of needs that kids aren't really going to voice. I mean, I don't know very many kids that are going to be like, I'm feeling uncomfortable because I don't know where to go to the bathroom, right? I don't know how many kids are going to say that out loud, but I can pretty much bet that every kid feels like that. Like internally, that's a feeling. Like if I don't know where the bathroom is, that's uncomfortable. So being able to sort of point those things out in not obvious way. Like I'm not advocating for staff to go, look everybody, I know you're going to be uncomfortable until I show you where to go to the bathroom or where to put your stuff. So let me go ahead and do that now. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying as we're moving around, as you're taking your group and doing a camp tour or introducing them to different people on camp or just keeping them busy saying, hey, we're waiting for one more kid. Let's go to the other end of camp and I can show you guys where archery is. All that kind of stuff. Along the way, point out, here's where the bathroom is. There's the dining hall at day camp. Here's where we always meet before lunch. And this area is where we're going to meet lunch or where we're going to eat lunch. For both day and resident camp, think about their stuff. Where are they going to put their stuff? You walk into any preschool classroom anywhere, one of the first things you notice is that every kid has a cubby. And the reason why is that it's like their space. That need doesn't go away just because you're in kindergarten or first grade or you're 37 years old. We all feel like this need as far as like, where am I going to put my stuff? Where does it belong? Show them those kinds of things. Show them all that sort of those sort of basic needs kinds of things. Where are the adults always going to be? Right? At some resident camps, it's obvious. You're in a square room. That's your cabin. All the beds are there. That's where the counselor bed is. Some other resident camps is not as obvious. There's like a little back room on the side of the cabin, or counselors don't even stay in the cabin. They stay at the other cabin in the middle of the circle or whatever. Make sure that kids know all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's a huge piece. I would say along with that, that sort of knowledge base is I would talk about the schedule. If you can, I would give them a schedule. Literally hand them a schedule for the week or 2 weeks. Now, when I say that, I often get pushback from counselors who tell me that they don't want to give away like the cool secret, activity that's happening on Thursday or whatever. And I'm not saying do that. Like, of course, it's absolutely fun to have, surprises in the schedule and whatever. But a great majority of it's not going to change. You're gonna, what their schedule is. Even if it's a sort of decentralized program and the kids are sort of choosing freely throughout each day, you still know the structure of the day. And so whatever you can to give them the schedule, that's really grounding for a lot of people. I mean, think about what it's like when you go anywhere, when you go to the airport, when you go to a conference, when you go to school. Almost immediately, what are you given? You're given a schedule. What's going to happen when? You don't have any control over it, like at the airport. You have zero control over when your plane goes. But that itinerary, understanding when things go and where do I go and all that, that's extremely important. It makes everybody feel more grounded. Another big skill that I talk about all the time, and again, I think a lot of people do this, but don't really understand how important it is, especially right at the beginning. I mean, it's obviously important for all the time. it's real simple. It's just sort of body language stuff. I want everybody in the first 5 minutes to be really thinking about what their face looks like, and I really want you to smile. There's a reason for that. It helps people feel better about approaching you, right? I mean, the reality is that most people, when they're just sitting there, when they're waiting, when they're at rest, look like this. It's pretty uncomfortable. It doesn't look very inviting. Not very many people, as far as when they're just at rest, look like this. So I really want you to think about that, because kids, upon approach, right, can get a feeling in their gut of what their experience is going to be, all based on something as simple as your smile, your face, how your body is. Are you sort of angled towards them? Are you kind of angled away, not really paying attention? What are you doing with your body? It's incredibly important in the first few minutes.
And Scott, one of the things that you said right from the very beginning, I think, is so important, is get right to their level and talk to the kids first before the parents.
That can be very challenging. I think anybody who's ever worked at camp or with kids before know that feeling of the parent who comes sort of swooping in, and it's almost as if this experience was going to be the parent's experience. It can be really just sort of alarming for, I think, staff when a parent kind of comes storming in. You have to do the best you can to sort of engage the kid first. Even if that is a little bit off-putting to the parent, I think the subtext is, I'm here for your kid. Some parents will answer questions for their kids. Hey, hi, I'm Scott, I'm going to be your counselor. This is so-and-so. What are you really excited for about camp? Oh, he's really excited to go swimming and, do archery. It's like, oh, that's great. That's what you're excited for, but what's he excited for? And we've got to be able to talk, engage directly with those kids. Physically, a great way to do it, especially for the younger kids, is physically to get down, crouch down, get on your knee, sort of physically get on their level. A little bit harder with bigger or older kids, obviously depending on your size. But it's really important to think about stuff like that as far as in those first few moments.
Do you do anything, Scott, with your staff to get them practicing, or as the training for this sort of activity, them having the first 5-minute mindset?
Yeah, actually, we do a couple of different things. I mean, one, obviously, we have them sort of go through this, meaning that my directors come about a day or two before the unit leaders. The unit leaders come about a day or two before the staff. And so one of the things that we're trying to role model from the very beginning is what this is like, right? And we're not necessarily explicit about it. I mean, I don't say to my, to the unit leaders, hey, did you notice how I kept you guys really active and engaged in the first, half an hour that you were here? No, I mean, I don't say it necessarily like that, but that's what we do. And then we have the ability to sort of reflect back on it and use it as an example. So I'm maybe not as explicit as that, but we really work to doing some of these very same things when the unit leaders come and then when the staff come. And then 2 days later, when we're actually having this conversation wrapped in and around opening day and what are we doing, we can say, hey, just like when you got here, we had a schedule for you. We had some really specific instructions about where you were supposed to go. Each unit leader quickly did a tour of the area, so you kind of knew where everything was. Just like that, we want you to do that with kids. And so, that sort of experiential approach is probably the best way to do it. And then, the other piece that I really love to do, and this is really super effective with returning staff or staff from another camp or anybody who's worked with kids before, is you get them to generate some of the things that they do in the first few minutes that they have a group of kids, right? You say, okay, what are some of the things that you would do? What are some of the activities and so on and so forth? You get them talking about it, and then you relate it back to these principles, and you say, absolutely, that really is important because of this idea over here. And it basically like front loads the philosophy behind why you would do something, at the same time affirming what they've already done. And basically you're saying in that moment, yeah, you're a really sweet counselor because of this reason that you didn't even really know. So it's a great way to get them feeling good about what it is that they've already done. Like I said at the beginning, right? A lot of this stuff is, it's not new. The framework might be a little different, but it's understanding why that I think is so important. So much of what we do is just, because that's what we've always done. And we've got to get away from that, because if that's how we're going to do it, it's really hard to be intentional about what kids can experience when they come to our programs.
Yeah, there's so many things to think about. That's really great, Scott. It's a good way for us to get our staff in the right mindset and establish some good not policies, but real actions for when kids first come in. So, any other final thoughts on this, Scott?
Yeah, I guess I would just leave everybody with this thought of thinking about, at the end of the day, it's about trying to create these connections. We want to try and start that as quickly as we can. The idea around first 5-minute skills is that, we have a very limited time with a lot of kids. For some of us, it's only 5 or 6 days. Yet, they'll turn around and they'll say how, camp is the most, the most important week of their lives, so on and so forth. It's a really big impact in what oftentimes is a very short amount of time. And so the first 5-minute skills and this idea of what can happen so quickly at the beginning is really about how do we engage that idea, how do we sort of help move it along straight away and get them connected and get them sort of into a social network at camp that, again, just like we were talking about at the beginning, will help their perspective of the entire experience be more positive, and then chances are they'll actually have a more positive experience.
Yo, thanks for joining us for the Scott Arizala Show. My name is Travis Allison. You can find the details about the show at camphacker.org, and Scott's got lots of stuff on his website.
Yes, thanks, Travis. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. If you want to find out more about what I do, please visit my website at thecampcounselor.com. And again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.
Well, my body lies over the ocean. My body lies over the sea. Ooh, my body lies over the ocean. Oh, bring back my body.